Singapore and Australia have agreed to work towards a legally binding protocol on economic resilience covering energy and key sectors. This will ensure the flow of essential goods, such as liquefied natural gas and diesel, between both countries. The move comes amid global supply chain disruptions due to the Middle East conflict and was announced during Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's visit to Singapore. Sabrina Ng reports.
A relationship built on mutual trust and cooperation, now coming under the spotlight against the backdrop of a global energy crunch. Both have pledged closer cooperation to ensure energy security under the Free Trade Agreement.
Our partnership is built on trust, and that trust is enabling us to act decisively today. In a more fractured and volatile world, we choose to stay open, to stay connected, and to stand together. Through the strength of our partnership, I am confident that Australia and Singapore will not just get through the crisis, but we will emerge stronger and more resilient.
The conflict in the Middle East is a long way from our region, but every nation in our region is being affected by it. By building regional cooperation on energy security and economic resilience, we strengthen our own fuel security and our own economy. Our friendships in the region help our farmers back home. And the best way to deal with this global crisis is indeed to work together as partners and as neighbours.
In a joint statement, both Prime Ministers reaffirmed their commitment to support a resilient, rules-based multilateral trading system that underpins stability during periods of global disruption. They also recognise each other's importance in their energy security. Singapore is Australia's largest supplier of refined petroleum products, supplying more than half of Australia's imported refined petroleum last year. On the flip side, Australia, as the world's second largest exporter of liquefied natural gas, is a key source for Singapore. Much of Singapore's power generation stems from natural gases. When asked if Singapore would impose export restrictions, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong says there are no plans to do so, and the country did not have to do so even during the darkest times of the COVID-19 pandemic. Both sides will also collaborate by having two dialogues. One will work towards economic resilience and trade. The other, which will involve ministers on both sides, aims to strengthen energy cooperation. It comes as prices continue to climb globally.
There's not very much individual countries can do to influence the global energy market. But what Australia and Singapore have decided to do now is to work together, is to provide mutual support, and to find ways in which we can strengthen our cooperation, keep essential supplies flowing, and by doing so, we believe we will further strengthen our energy security and resilience.
These are challenging times. And we need to recognise that. We need to respond to that in an orderly, cohesive way that seeks to not just develop solutions to the immediate challenges in terms of supply, but also how do we emerge from this more resilient, strengthening those relations in trade and cooperation going forward as well. And that is certainly our intention.
As part of his visit, Mr. Albanese was also hosted to a tour of Jurong Island, Singapore's energy and chemicals hub.
And with Singapore and Australia working towards a new legally binding protocol on economic resilience and essential supplies, let's take a look at the two countries' relationship in an important sector, energy. Now, Singapore generates 95% of its electricity using natural gas, which includes both liquefied natural gas, or LNG, and pipeline gas from neighbouring countries. The remaining 5% comes from a mix of coal, oil, solar, and waste-to-energy sources. Now, the heavy reliance on imports is why the relationship matters. Australia is the world's second largest LNG exporter and supplies more than a third of Singapore's needs. Although Singapore also imports LNG from countries like Qatar and the US, the current geopolitical situation makes Australia a more important supplier. And it's a two-way partnership. Despite being a major energy exporter, Australia is also heavily reliant on imported refined products like diesel and petrol. It imports over 80% of its refined fuel, critical for key sectors of its economy like transport, mining, and agriculture. Singapore plays a key role here. It supplies more than a quarter of Australia's total refined fuel imports, and that includes 55% of its petrol, over a fifth of jet fuel, and 15% of diesel. Meanwhile, average prices of diesel held steady for the third day today. As of 7 p.m., the average diesel price stands at $4.63 per litre, a 74% increase from the 3rd of March. And as for petrol, the average price dipped by about 1 cent at $3.45 per litre. Now, diesel prices across all 5 retailers are unchanged. SPC lowered its 95-octane prices by 4 cents to $3.42 per litre, a day after Shell made similar moves. All other brands held their prices. And for more on this, we speak with Simon Tay, who is a chairman of the Singapore Institute of International Affairs. Simon, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Angela.
So what does Prime Minister Albanese's visit tell us about how Singapore and Australia see each other's role, especially in this very uncertain climate?
I think the most immediate point is about energy. There are critical questions after what's happened in the Iran war. The second is the follow-up to the bilateral relationship with Singapore and Australia. Already strong relationship, has had a strategic partnership, seen a declaration of going further, not just on energy, but on green economy, on food, and other areas. And the third, of course, is the global context. We are going through very turbulent times, as both leaders have said, and partnerships, friendships, critical resources, these are very important to reinforce and give reassurance, not just to leaders, but to the people in both societies.
Yeah. Now, front and center of this visit has been energy cooperation. So how has energy moved from being an economic issue to now being a very strategic one between the two nations?
Well, I think with the near closure of the Straits of Hormuz, as our Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan has said, this is a choke point for Asia because a lot of that oil and gas comes to China, Korea, our part of the world, and Australia is part of the world. Australia, in that sense, is Asian. And as your leading story has shown, they export certain types of energy, but they are reliant on other types of energy. So the instinct of people when they face potential price shocks is to clutch down and hold back. And that's why I think the two leaders have made a very important emphasis on remaining open, following rules. Neither side should walk away from contracts the private sector have signed.
Yeah, and both leaders have also agreed on resilience as being really important in this time. How is diplomacy changing given these overlapping, or some analysts might call polycrises?
Well, you see, that's where Prime Minister Wong's reference to the pandemic is a very important thing to see. During the pandemic, many countries did hold back and things broke down, supply chains broke down. This is not quite the same, but we're facing shortages and the instinct has remained. And so the polycrisis, whether it's climate, whether it's the current war or other disruptions that could happen near us or further, I think these really reinforce the need to have those open ties with many people, but particularly strong ties with some people. And I want to re-emphasize that this is not for Singapore just a question about energy. This is about food. Our island doesn't have enough food. And we've seen in the past certain food sources get cut off.
And what does this visit show us then about how middle powers like Singapore and Australia, how they're managing global risks, especially when, the great powers or the major power rivalry continues to escalate and evolve?
Well, this is another world viewpoint that Australia and Singapore really share in common. We are both friends of America. Australia particularly is a formal military ally. And we're both economically friends and cooperate with China. And we know the tension between the two. So I describe this as a G-2. How do we go on dealing with each other when the two major powers do not want to deal with each other? And I think this is very important to see, therefore, that unlike, say, Canadian Prime Minister Carney's view that we can run the world, I think what the two leaders are saying, we can reassure each other. We can tell each other that our relationship makes sense to both of us and we continue to uphold certain standards. And we can pathfind. So in this midst of all this, Singapore has signed with Australia a green shipping corridor. So as we strengthen the supply chains, we're also going to try to green them because, as you said, in the poly crisis, climate's never far from anybody's mind.
Yeah, and part of these like pathfinding options and also reassurances are the emphasis on trusted partnerships now compared to, say, formal alliances that we used to depend on in the past. Do you see a shift in the importance towards these trusted partnerships?
Very much, I think, Angela. I mean, there are going to be importance for alliances, but we need to go beyond the pieces of paper, right? I mean, when you see Prime Minister Albanese and our Lawrence Wong, you know that actually they've met before, they have looked each other in the eye, and there's a certain amount of trust. It's not just a paper agreement. And what we're talking about here is not just a declaration. There has been a commitment to further implementation on details among the officials. And that's an important step that beyond this high-level talk, real practical cooperation happens. I'm delighted to also tell Singaporeans and reassure them that besides Australia, very important partner, we have seen PM Wong's government step up ties with India, South Korea, and there have been pledges now to open with Mexico and even in Addis Ababa. So really the effort of PM Wong after last year's election is to really make sure that Singapore is plugged into the world on positive terms.
Yeah, on that point specifically, do you think this could be the start of more broad energy coalitions in the region? And do you see Singapore as well positioned to spearhead or lead that?
Well, a lot depends on how many people can come to the same thinking. The Philippines earlier, one of our ASEAN neighbors, has made a call for, I think, Brunei and others to supply it. I don't think that call has been fully answered the way Australia and Singapore have. And you see, as you said in the story, we supply refined oil and diesel to them, which they need, and they supply LNG to us. So bilaterally, there's a more easy calculation. You need something, I have it. I need something, you have it. When you multiply it, that becomes a more difficult,
more complex
trade-off. And secondly, if you get too big, America or China can say, what are you all doing? Are you ganging up against one of us? So I think right now, we see a little bit of bilateralism, and that's good. And then we might see other bilateral ties with the countries I named.
Simon, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us. I've been chatting with Simon Tay, who is chairman of the Singapore Institute of International Affairs.